All right, and you will notice I just did start recording, so I'm going to quickly recap what we've been talking about. So we're going to work on 2023 projects today with a discussion led by our co-leaders, and we're just talking briefly about implementation sciences and how that could impact what we choose to do. On the next slide here, this is where I'm going to pass it over to the co-leaders here first to kind of lead a discussion into what potential projects we could do and any interest in that. And I will say we do have a poll here when we're ready after we've had this discussion to kind of gauge interest and stuff like that. So I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Slater here to lead that discussion.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. And Jeanette and Rich, please feel free to jump in and help out with the leading of the discussion. Yeah, we're looking for new ideas on projects. I think we are, I'm just here to facilitate. We can certainly maybe get updates on ongoing projects that we had last year, but we definitely are interested in generating new ideas. Andy did mention that the projects are unfunded. However, that's not to say that if one of the members of our work group has funding sources available to them, it is possible to leverage this work group to provide some some in-kind help on a project that you might have. So it doesn't necessarily just have to be ideas that are generated by us today within the work group. So I think most people have been with PAPREN long enough to know that who are on the call. I recognize most people, but not everyone. So just throwing that out there. So we had started out, Andy, I know you kind of gave examples before. Maybe we can go back to the slide with examples of kind of some of our existing work group projects. I know I'm involved in a project that's looking at park prescriptions. We have we collected data last year. We have started to analyze the data from that project, and had a presentation accepted at APHA. And I think Carissa, did I see Carissa on the call, or is she not on the call today?
I don't think she's here today.
Yeah. I think she might have submitted another abstract. I don't know if it's for APHA this coming fall. But
it was for ALC.
Did it? Yeah. Or yeah. And then thank you. I was going to say or ALC. But we're working on disseminating those results and getting that written up. So that's coming to an end. We would be talking about next steps. That was certainly just a very small kind of pilot project in terms of what to do. How do people in a clinical setting kind of define what they consider park prescriptions and other like green prescriptions, blue prescriptions. We're trying to move towards some common language, and we have started to have discussions with other researchers in that same realm who are doing similar research and try and maybe put together a collaborative group. So we're still continuing to move that project forward. I can give an update on the COVID-19 state orders project. We had used some data from the census pulse surveys to look at mental health, and we are also looking at recently released behavioral risk factor surveillance survey data that gives us some health outcome related measures on physical activity as well. And so that is moving forward. Jamie is presenting some of the results from that, I believe, at ALC, and she's also submitting it to APHA in the fall. But that will hopefully be up and ready to have a draft get ready to be published this spring. And then the development and validation of the self-efficacy and intention measures for spending time in nature. I think Jeanette, you're involved in that one, aren't you? Maybe.
Yeah, and so is Jay. Jay's here. You should probably talk about that.
Sure. So we went through the process and collected a nationwide survey on that. We published 2 papers, one on self-efficacy and intentions and one on attitudes towards spending time in nature. There's still more to be written off that. So if anybody has bandwidth and wants to write, that would be great, because I tend to have way too many projects going on at the same time, but everything's collected and the data set's there. So anybody can contact me that wants to kind of contribute to some analysis and writing.
So Jay, just to build on that, so you say the data's there, so I guess you're offering to share that data with someone who might want to generate new research ideas off of it?
Yeah, so you would really need to understand measurement development, and so it's a measurement development study that we went through a 9-step process on, but we published 3 of the scales so far. There's probably an additional 3 or 4 scales in there that need to be done, but you know, knowledge of split half measures, structural equation modeling, et cetera, are kind of needed to be able to deal with that data.
So I guess maybe since you're actually providing a resource, maybe this is where we could start our discussion about future projects. I think, like, so I mentioned that with the park prescriptions, we are going to be we have the start of a paper already, a publication already, but we want to move that entire initiative forward and build on what we've already started to do. So there's an opportunity there for future research to be taken on by this group that we could move forward in the next year or so. And Jay's just also brought up another possibility for an opportunity for additional research that this group could undertake. Jay, I hope I'm not putting you on the spot too much, but maybe you could provide some information on which measures are you still have that would need to be written up into a research paper, and maybe we could provide those to Andy to distribute out to the working group, because there are a number of people who aren't on today as well that might be interested in it.
Sure. My preference would be, I think there's about a half a dozen of us that were part of the team that put it together. So that would be kind of my first preference for folks that have been involved, but certainly can share if people have interest beyond that.
Okay, that would be great. And then I think I saw Terry, you also were conducting a survey that we had listed as one of our projects at one time.
Yeah, and it kind of moved away from this group, but there are many people who are involved with it, and they're on the call today. And also some other PAPREN folks who aren't here. But that's what we call the Coping in Nature survey during COVID. And the people, so myself, Courtney Schultz, Abby Kosicki, who are on the call, plus Gina Basenyi, Jason Baccaro. I'm trying to think of who else is. The other folks are not regular participants, but what we did is, again, released a nationwide survey. I presented the development of the survey at Shift, and Courtney presented some of the initial data from just some descriptive statistics also at Shift. We have another abstract at ALC. And so we released the survey in May, got close to 2,000 respondents. The way we released it was to 100 of the largest metropolitan statistical areas, and specifically to zip codes that were in either the top third or the lowest third of the wealth profile. And we are now, we've got a clean data set, we're analyzing it, and the folks who are engaged in the project are working on it. I'm working on the manuscript describing the construction of the survey, which used sort of a combination of the health belief and the constraints negotiation theory. And so, yeah, we're moving forward with it, and that's where we are. And as we get into the analysis and we see areas that people might be interested, but right now we've got a lot of people working on it. And sort of like with Jay, I want to prioritize the folks who've been engaged with the project and give them first crack at looking at the data. But you know, some interesting stuff, and I'll just kind of lead with our abstract for ALC, and that is where one of my undergrads looked at gender and caregiving and who's spending time outside and what do they consider nature and green space. And so she looked specifically at women who either had caregiving or non-caregiving. And surprisingly, based on what's in the literature about caregiving being an inhibitory factor, there was no significant difference between women who said they had caregiving or not responsibilities, but what was different is what they defined as green space. And so women who have caregiving identified a wider number of items that they considered green space and identified green space that was closer to home as nature. So that's where we are so far. Courtney, do you want to add anything more?
No, that's a great summary of it.
I think we need to hear a presentation on this in one of our other meetings. It sounds really interesting.
I
Yeah.
was going to say the same thing, Jeanette.
Well, and I think I said in my email to Andy yesterday is I would be happy if there's an open spot on the calendar to kind of give an update on it.
Oh,
Yeah,
thank you.
there is. We can be. I'll respond. I'll respond.
Okay.
Andy,
Okay.
if there's a minute, that's actually a good segue for me to say hello to everybody because I've been doing some work kind of in this space. My name's Kate Reddy. I've been at CDC with the MPAO for about 15 years, actually mostly with food systems, food environment within the greater built environment world, and then most recently on the early care and education team before transitioning to the physical activity branch in January. So I'm now on Heather Devlin's team, and she'd like me to focus on parks. But I wanted to mention that when I was on the early care and education team, one of my big foci was looking at outdoor learning environments and the connection between children in 0 to 5 space and the multitude of benefits they experience in addition to physical activity when they spend time in nature. So that was interesting to hear about that caregiving focus of your analysis, Terry.
Thank you. Oh, the other thing I want to just toss in is that, you know, in many of our surveys that we've given, especially over COVID, you know, not just us, but you know, the collective imperial we of all of us who are interested in parks and green space, you know, showing high numbers of people who value green space. Because our survey did not just go out as sort of a snowball survey to people who were associated with parks and whatever, but was based on a random survey design. We find it interesting that less than 50%, maybe I think it was 48% or something like that, of the respondents said that they looked at nature as a place to go for their mental health. So I think it'll be an interesting contrast based on the sampling technique. Okay, I'm done.
Thanks,
One
Terry.
other
That
quick
was really
question.
interesting. Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Kate.
Sorry, Sandy. One other quick question. In addition, other than the caregiving analysis, were the majority of the analysis, or was the majority of the data focused on adult population as opposed to children?
Yes, it was all an adult population. Everyone was over 18.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Well, thanks for that information. So I think do we have other updates on projects that are associated with the work group that we've missed?
Those were, we have covered all the updates on the people that did respond. We didn't actually have too many different projects going on. We had Jay's and then Sandy, yours that you discussed, and then Terry's. Those were the three big updates that I got from people. So.
Okay, well, so then I think at this point, we want to really just open it up and see if anyone has any thoughts or ideas for additional projects that this group could take on. If you have an idea for like a small contained project that you wanted some help on, that, you know, we can reach out to other work group members to see if they have interest, or if anyone has anything else that they would like to suggest that we as a work group could work on trying to move forward as a research project. Yeah, Terry.
So another thing I did at SHIP was we held a workshop that was on surveys and, you know, what do funders need and what will people take. And Jay and Courtney were both part of that, along with who else? Oh, a grad student from the University of Minnesota and a community organizer from here in Chicago, Deborah Williams. And, you know, we have a lot of information. I've asked all the panelists to write up a summary of their main points, and we will be coming forward with a paper with that. But I'm wondering, rather than just have this be, you know, very narrowly focused on, you know, just one, you know, the 4 of us or 5 of us, and what happened at our tables. We've got all the notes from the table discussion, whether once we have a manuscript together, if this group might be interested in looking at it and thinking if they have anything more to contribute from their experience with both, again, you know, the issues of when you're doing community engaged programming, what are people willing to take for surveys? Because we're all concerned about overburdening people with surveys. And then the issue of how to integrate that with what do funders need? And, you know, one of the things that came up very clearly is that funders often don't provide enough money in their budgets, or we don't ask enough money in our budgets to actually do adequate evaluation of programs. And so that's just something I've been kind of toying with and trying to move writing that paper forward. So Jason, you were part. I was going to say, Jason, you were part of that. What do you, Jay or Courtney?
Yeah, I think we just need to figure out kind of how we format. It's a lot of good ideas in there, and I think it's kind of thinking through what kind of product that looks like. I think it's valuable, but it's kind of there's kind of a lot going on. Right?
I know exactly what you mean.
I would say too, one quick thing is, even though, you know, Terry, you're looking to get this published and write a paper product, products for PAPREN don't have to be published papers in academic journals. I know most of our work has been so far in this working group, but it could be a group of us developing a workshop, and then the workshop and administering that workshop is a product for the subgroup as well. They can be policy statements, they can be recommendation letters, or, you know, like anything. A lot of different things can be products. They don't have to just be academic or research based either. Or as far as, I mean, not research based, evidence based, of course, but not being, you know, reporting on research.
Yeah, like a brief or something from this roundtable discussion that you had. And there's one thing that was left off, that we had a Federal Register response from this group as well, Andy. So that was also a product that was I don't know when it was, last year, I guess, or
It was 2020, I think, wasn't it? Or maybe it was 21. I don't
I'll
know.
look
maybe it was 21. I don't know. Time has been a little odd these past couple of years. Somebody had their hand up.
I was going to comment on that same thing along that same line. You know, GP Red has several dissemination tools that anybody can participate in. Research briefs is one of them. We've published this whole series of research briefs that you can find on the GP Red website. And that would be great if somebody wanted to, you know, put together we can help you put it out as a research brief. The other thing we have is haven't done any that I know of lately, but we were doing a video series. So it could simply be an interview type of format where we would have someone interview you and you talk about the research or findings. and that becomes a short YouTube video. It's called GP Red Presents. And then we also have our newsletter. Just, it could even be a real short article, or and I write the newsletter, so I'm always looking for content. If you have something that you'd like people to know about from the Reds mailing list, and that the newsletter goes to, that maybe a link to a paper or a presentation you're going to be doing or something like that, or if you wanted to actually write a short article about what you're doing. So there's a lot of, there's 3 things right there that Red offers as far as dissemination.
Thanks, Robbie. Those are
Sure.
all, you know, great ideas, great resources for us to know that they're available, and for us to think about future projects and what might fit with some
Yeah.
of those dissemination outlets.
And I would say the main audience for that is going to be not, you know, there's some of the academic community there, but if you want to reach out more to the practice world, that's a good avenue for that.
Great. Other ideas?
I was just gonna ask if any of the practitioners in the meeting today have things, you know, they see in their work that we could help, I don't know, answer or address.
Yeah, I mean, from the practitioners, or just unanswered, like park and green space related priorities that maybe we haven't thought about that. Oh, Corey, it looks like you've got your hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you. And maybe just point me in a direction, maybe where I need to go with this, but where seems like we have different user groups that have different priorities for their health aspect, accessing nature. And that seems to be the ground, a new battleground for the user conflict. It seems like more of our hiking community, it's not really about the physical access of the physical hiking, it's the mental ability to disengage with the world, and more from our mental health perspective. Whereas we get some of our mountain bikers using the same trails, that it is a little bit more about the physical aspect, and the physical health is more of a priority than the mental capacity. And it seems some of those are some issues we're seeing up. And I was just curious about other groups, you know, whether if what's the basis for an equestrian access? Is it, what is their priority? And does that help us as practitioners maybe address some of these conflict issues that sometimes are just superficial fears about, oh my gosh, you know, we're gonna have a mountain biker going 30 miles an hour while I'm trying to hike over here. But it's kind of been an interesting thought that's kind of popped up.
Oh, that's interesting. Corey, have you started any like surveys, or I mean, is this just kind of more like you're talking with people kind of casually, or are you kind of systematically collecting information from your different user groups?
So as of today, it's totally anecdotal based on some public interactions for a couple of major projects. One was we were trying to develop one of our canyons with just a small skills park. And then the hiking group, you know, was really adamant, and it was all about mental and emotional attachment to the activity, not so much the physical. I think on the flip side is I'm going to have an opportunity, because I'm going to be re-looking at our trail master plan and our open space policy. And I think there'll be an opportunity maybe to do a small case study on that, of maybe at least here in Los Alamos, maybe we could incorporate some of those questions into some survey data with our users here in town, and maybe at least have a local glean, but it, it might have some relevance to issues that other people are having.
That sounds really interesting. Do you I mean, are you looking for help with kind of conducting that case study or survey? There might be people from this work group that would be interested in working with you and being a resource. We could certainly have Andy kind of propose it to our broader work group and see who, like, and have people sign up to work with you if that's something you'd be willing to do.
Yeah, I think as maybe my next role is to flesh this out a little bit more, maybe just, I guess, send a scope. I'm going to have some help with some public meetings, but definitely if that was, I think it'd be important, especially because I think that, yeah, yours minimal, but these guys are doing it too. So let's figure out a way to work together. But I think it's definitely some interesting thoughts there, and I can flesh this out a little bit more and get a scope to Andy, and he can pass it on and see what role folks might feel comfortable with. But it's just like some anecdotal information that I'd like to either corroborate or blow up.
Kind of a little piggyback on that. What kind of I was thinking of too was just in terms of you have the health benefit differences in terms of why people are getting out these different user groups, but then also how each user group views the other user group. Mountain bikers a lot of times I think are viewed as just destroying trails. Get out there in the mud and they create tire tracks and things, but then the mountain biking community does way more trail work than the hiker community does overall. It seems like I've seen some research on that. Equestrian too. I think equestrian use, a lot of times hikers view equestrian use as being more problematic in terms of destruction of trails and things like that. But they also get out on the trail and actually do way more trail work than hikers and runners and things. Just kind of that may be a little bit more anecdotal in terms of that. But yeah, anyway, it's very interesting.
Well, and I think to build on it too, with that example is people don't see how their little social trails really create more harm sometimes than full-blown trails, like you said, that mountain bikers use. They don't realize that social trail after a couple of years has erosion and other issues, and they don't count that in their rights when they're complaining about the equestrian or the mountain bikers or other users.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll play with something and get this fleshed out, and I appreciate you letting me share here today. Thank you.
And then just quickly to point out, Laura posted in the chat that the forest preserves of Cook County have collected data recently on the traffic on social trails. Or do you want to say anything else about that?
No, I was just surprised to learn that, even if, and the forest preserves allows people to go off trail, at least right now, there's no prohibition on it, but they have done, I don't remember how they collected the data, but Terry might know, but they did present it to show that it absolutely had an impact on the nature around the trails as well. And to discourage the use of or creation of social trails, just in case you ever wanted to have another data point or something, we could connect you with those folks.
I'm trying to find a link that may include information on that report, and I can't find it. So Laura, if you know.
Yeah, Kathy presented the data.
Okay.
Oh. Hi, everyone. Laura Bayless. I'm fairly new to this group. I think maybe second meeting, but just wanted to add on to Andy's intro about the implementation science presentation by Stephanie. That was great. As a fellow implementation scientist, I'm happy to partner on any work we do in that area. And I think my 2 cents on developing ideas would be any evidence-based practice policies that you see are not being adopted or not being implemented as intended. That's where kind of my ideas have come from in terms of figuring out why, and then figuring out implementation strategies. So I don't specifically have any. I'm not working quite as closely on these interventions, but you've mentioned things like the childhood outdoor experiences or park prescriptions. And then I think partnering with our community partners is also where those ideas can come from.
Yeah, kind of to build off of Laura's comment there, it's kind of like finding those knowledge gaps in that research that we could try to implement real quick, but that's definitely something I'm interested in too. So if anyone does have any implementation, like things that they see, and I'll definitely dive into it too, but I think that's really interesting.
I think it would be great if we could do some kind of implementation science study in the next couple of years. I guess, I wonder, I wonder if in particular we'd want to just reach out to any of our practice-based work group members and see what they're seeing in their own, in their own communities, their own areas, and if there's anything there that we could build on. Maybe that's something that we can just do as a work group to start it, at least start the conversation.
I will say additionally too, Stephanie Lemon did offer up assistance in if we do pick implementation science things to focus on as well.
Hello, everyone. I don't know if I missed it earlier, but in terms of the nature-based health intervention and the perceptions of what exactly that means that we were working on, I tried to get some more folks to survey from the medical side from the American Public Health Association. And one group actually did include it in their newsletter, and we got one response. So I have followed up with those folks to see if more folks might be able to send it out and maybe do it to the actual listserv rather than just the newsletter. But there's a little update on the nature-based health intervention that we were working on last year, and just exactly what that means to different folks, what a nature-based health intervention means to different folks, and what terms they use for it, throughout the different kinds of people that might be involved, whether it's park, practice, or within the medical world as well.
I have a question. Has there been a thorough analysis of park districts and natural reserve spots, state and local, that has actually included either a Nature RX program or even just an encouragement of using the outdoors for your health? I just know that when I did look over the APHA overall, the whole meeting schedule just still didn't seem to be much discussion about nature and health at all, even though you all have mentioned a few presentations that you participated in where either you presented or it came up, but I was just wondering about the penetration of the idea in the public health world.
From what I understand, I think it's been worked on, but I don't think the products recently have been published. I know different folks on this call, I think, have been working on that. I don't know if others have updates.
I think Courtney, I think you're most tapped into the whole park prescription area right now. Courtney Schultz.
Yeah, what is the specific question?
Courtney, my question was, has anyone done even a national survey or a state survey of park districts, park systems, natural resource areas that are encouraging people to use their spaces for their health. You know, would it be worthwhile if that has not been done? Would that be a worthwhile sense of knowing how much this message or, you know, just marketing or communication message to the public that uses those park districts, park spaces and that are publicly financed? You know, even the Cook County Forest Preserves, they had the campaign actually even before the pandemic, where it was feel free in nature, feel free in our spaces, which certainly had some health folded into it. So I was just curious if anybody had ever done a survey, a recent survey analysis of messaging.
Park RX out of IGG Institute of Golden Gate had done some looks at how that was being processed. Rethink Outside also did a really interesting survey looking at the language around how we were messaging these spaces and how broad communities were doing it. I would say since a lot of those efforts happened over the last 10 to 5 years at this point, there's probably a nice gap in the literature where we start to incorporate not just park prescriptions, but even things like forest bathing and nature therapy and the blue prescriptions as well into a much more holistic approach of these natural spaces as it relates to health.
Yeah, I mean, my impression, and mine is less statistically and research-based than Courtney's, is that the parks programs have been very good at and interested in taking up this message as a way of essentially expanding their rationale for existing. The question with uptake and penetration is more in the public health community and the medical care, the practitioner community, whether to get them, those are, you know, communities that are much more dependent on a really solid evidence base. So I guess there's a distinction there between messaging and uptake with by the Parks Department and messaging and uptake by the healthcare practitioning community at large.
Well, those are implementation issues. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I was just what Laura just said. Or typed.
Hi, everyone. My name is Bola. So Courtney, I definitely would love to pick your brain and get help, because this is what I do. As a nutritionist and health and wellness coach, I try to get marginalized communities and underrepresented women outside. And so I see the difficulty in impoverished communities. And then I see the difficulty. I've implemented a program in partnership with CDC with their Move Your Way program. And so I hold a last Saturday workout, and then I hold a community walk every Tuesday with the objective to go into multiple communities to find out what those communities actually need. However, what I'm seeing at some of these outdoor locations is that they're not set up or geared to make people feel welcome. And so a lot of people are not wanting to come out. So unfortunately, I have a dilemma here, because when I go into these communities, there's nothing set up where kids are able to come outside and play. There's no planned activities. There's more so maybe a Juneteenth event, maybe a July 4th event, but nothing that's set for a consistent, everyday, supportive approach to get our children that are, and I'm in Wesley Chapel, Florida. And so the communities that I work with out here are Dade City. So I don't know if you're really familiar. Dade City, Wesley Chapel, Zephyr Hills, but then I also spread over to Pinellas County in St. Petersburg and work with that impoverished. And so it's how in the world do I gather data? How do I be able to show the need for, there's no infrastructure. So when we talk about bike riding, some of you were mentioning mountain biking, they're not thinking about that because there's no roads for them to even be able to bike. There's, how do we get them out and play? The foundation is not there. So how do we start to show that there's a need for it? That's where I am.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Terry.
I was gonna say, Bo, that's related to a project that is a community-led project that I'm working with by a group called the Friends of Big Marsh. Big Marsh is a new city park on the south side of Chicago. It's 5 or 6 years old, and it's built over an industrial site. And the people in that community are facing exactly the same questions you have, and we're right in the midst of trying to figure out what do people want. And this is part of the rationale for what I mentioned earlier in the meeting of, what surveys, what will people take to share information, because also the communities in Chicago, especially the communities of color, are terribly overburdened with surveys because everybody wants to know what they're thinking. But then oftentimes that information doesn't come back to them. And so we're actually kind of building our project around the idea of working with communities and doing focus groups to say, well, what do you want to know? Not just what do you need to have, but what do you want to have? And what information would you like to share with us, and how would you like to share it with us? So perhaps we can think about that.
So being a person of color that grew up in Minnesota, and I used to play in Chicago, so I'm very familiar with those areas. And so it's not, and I'm glad that you stated that people are overburdened with surveys, because we historically have seen that we know what these impoverished communities need, and it's no different from what a suburb where I live has.
Right.
And so it's how do we get the monetary funds to be able to bring that into places that actually want the same resources. So I don't think we need to do surveys. I think we need to say, how do we get it into these communities and not make the communities feel like they owe us or they have to do certain things in order to be able to receive these resources.
Yeah.
So, Bo, I was going to ask, have you, and this is something, honestly, that this work group could potentially help you do too. Have you done any like built environment audits yourself, or your team? You're saying that you don't have infrastructure. So, the first thing you need to, if you document it, right? If you conduct, there's lots of great tools out there that can help you show that you don't have the infrastructure that you need, right? And so you can document it. And that's something that many of us on this call are very familiar with, how to actually, go out and survey neighborhoods and capture that information so that you have some of the evidence and the information that you would need then to approach some of the stakeholders that might be able to try and divert resources to you, that you would need. You would have to, I'm sure, you'd need to be reaching out to the local government. I mean, you would need to probably change some of the ways that the community looks to at least provide some of the areas that would be great neighborhood resources for your communities and for the populations that you're working with. So, I mean, that's definitely something that we can talk more about within this group and help you figure out the steps that you would need to take to really try and influence change with your community stakeholders.
Okay, so I was invited, I'm one of the entrepreneurs that have partnered with St. Leo University. So they wanted to create a social impact roundtable so that they could provide more opportunities for the community. So I am one of those businesses. So that was strategically done intentionally, as well as becoming an MGV with IFAS, so that I can learn and teach how we become sustainable by having our own community gardens. And so doing that. So I've done the partnerships, however, the data in which you were speaking of, Sandy, and how would I do a poll? Where would I go in the streets? Which I'm not, grassroots is okay with me. I've been here, but I think that's where the disconnect is those that sit here are a little afraid to get into grassroots and to go into the community. So would I do a door-by-door survey? Am I going to do so it's collecting that data in which you're speaking of that I would definitely need assistance.
Yeah, so it's not door to door. It's like doing audits of your streets, of the parks. If you don't have parks, then there's no parks to audit. And so it would be you just maybe recruiting some of your coworkers, or I mean, we can talk about different ways that you could get people to help you do the audits, but you don't necessarily have to go door to door knocking and, capturing information from the individuals that are living in the communities that you're working with.
You could even start on Google Street View.
Yeah.
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 What?
On Google Street
View.
Oh.
Yeah.
First seeing what you have, and then ground truthing it, saying, oh yeah, that's there, that's not there, kind of validating what we see on Google Street View.
Yeah. I mean, so I'm just, I know that this call lasts only for another 5 minutes. And we want to be respectful of everybody's time. Bola, we absolutely, we can continue this conversation, and we can get more information from you about where you're at, and we can talk about, again, we're looking for different projects. I mean, this is something that this work group might be, a number of people in the work group might be interested in getting involved in. So so we can continue this talk offline after our call ends, and see how some of the members of the work group might be able to help you with what you're trying to do down in Florida.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Maybe is Andy going to put together some summary, a checklist that we can all say our interest or something?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and do that too. Well, thank you all for this discussion. It has been, I think, very productive. And it's definitely helping us move forward on our 2023 projects. Just to conclude our meeting here, I just want to give everyone, we've covered these updates, everything like that. I just want to give everyone, let's say, 2 minutes here to, if anyone has anything for open mic that they want to share. Obviously, we just discussed projects, so anything else that anybody would like to share with the group here.
Sure. I have something on the idea of speakers for our future meeting. I don't know if anyone knows Lois Brink, who is a professor from University of Colorado, Denver. And I've worked with her over the years on what's called learning landscapes, which are schoolyard developments, which the city of Denver has basically redeveloped all of their elementary school sites, 90 some schools, with a concept that basically incorporates community gardens, incorporates various types of play spaces, and really looking at the outdoor environment. And what Lois has done is collect all the data over 20 years worth of those, and combine that with longitudinal data on things like test scores, standardized test scores, faculty recruiting and retention, student recruiting and retention, because these are open magnet schools and things like that. Anyway, she sent me a paper, a report to review last week, and there's a whole lot in it. It's pretty amazing. And they've done both longitudinal and cross-sectional analyses, looking at, comparing school sites to school sites under the program, as well as pre and post. So I could ask Lois if she'd be interested in presenting, if that's something we would be interested in.
I think that's a very good topic too, because I don't have a schedule in front of me, but we do have a group from Milwaukee, their recreational department, and they are going to present on their school transformation play spaces and stuff like that. So it might be a good continuation from that presentation. So absolutely, yeah.
I'll check in with her on that.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. Anybody else have any open mic notes that they want to share here real quick? No? All right, moving on. Quickly, I have one open mic note I would like to share. Your Parks and Green Space Fellow, me, is job hunting. So if anybody hears of any open opportunities or anything within the built environment, I'd love to stay working in this field. I'm interested in, obviously, built environment. My background's in epidemiology, which I will be graduating in May. But bike infrastructure, walking infrastructure, I do have some GIS experience. But just trying to generally help people be healthier with where they are in cities. So if you know of anything, feel free to reach out. And again, thank you in advance for that. And
Andy,
then just, oh, go ahead.
Can you just remind people, Matt, are you going to MPH or PhD?
Yeah, so I'm an MPH right now. Yep. Thank you for reminding me of that. So just finishing up my master's. Yep. So next meeting, I'm talking with a few people. We don't have a defined speaker yet, but we're really close. So I didn't want to quite put it in there yet. But that will be February 27, 2023 at the same time. So I'll release that as soon as we get that confirmed. The next PAPREN Grand Rounds will be Wednesday, February 22nd at 12 Eastern. It's David, and I don't know how to say his last name. But he's from the University of Nebraska Medical Center, and he'll be continuing our conversation on implementation sciences into the emergent development and coordination of local whole community physical activity systems for children. Advanced registration is required for that, so keep an eye out. You can register on the PAPREN website. And then final note here, the Equity and Inclusion Work Group in March is having a panel on a framework for assessing equitable health outcomes for parks, and they wanted to invite the entire Parks and Green Space workspace or work group to attend that as well. So I will make sure that there are meetings and links in there as we go, and we'll keep talking about this through the February meeting and remind you of this as well. But here's their lineup, and just wanted to put this on your radar for that as well. All right, well, thank you so much, everybody. I hope you enjoy the rest of your Monday. Thanks for discussing with us, and have a great day.
Thanks, bye.